Yo, what's going on, everyone? Thanks for coming to watch. So, guys, an update on this really big severe weather event that we've got going on across portions of the Central Plains. All right, we have a really big day of severe weather, as this could be a severe weather outbreak. It's our biggest severe weather event that we've had in quite a while. All right, we also do have a little localized severe weather event out there in New England. We have to talk about that as well. All right, but the big deal is what's going on across the central United States. So I'm going to give you guys all the details on that coming up. All right, so thank you for joining me here on this Monday afternoon. We have a lot to talk about in this video as we're gonna go over just all the latest information that we've got on this severe weather event that's actually starting. As you can see on satellite, we've got a lot of convection that's really starting to pop off here across sections of Minnesota. You can see in the Dakotas as well. Look at Nebraska. We have that one cell that I've been monitoring in the past few minutes that has been really blowing up. But we do have a lot of just big time storms that are starting to get going there. So one thing I do want to say before I start this video is that I am back. All right, I'm back from vacation, so apologize for not really doing any forecasts or any weather related videos other than just just of the scenery out there. But we are back. All right, we're gonna be back in the swing of things and just getting back to our usual schedule. So I will try to post as much as I can. School is starting up soon, so that's just gonna be a little bit of an issue that we're gonna have to deal with soon because I'm gonna be a little bit more busy. But that's what we've got going on right now. But I am back, so let's get right into the video. So going back to the satellite loop, you can see that we just got a lot of explosive convection going on out there. This is the main area that I'm watching here for storms. All right, you've got a lot of moisture and a lot of cape out there, and a lot of instability that's kind of building up. As you can see, within these clouds here, you see how there's a lot of breaking points. All right, these clouds are not kind of like stable and stuff. They don't like you see how these clouds they don't break. This is why we don't have storms up here. These clouds are breaking. That means that the sun can poke through the clouds and we get instability. So therefore, you can see across Minnesota, across Dakotas, into Nebraska. That's why we have those storms. All right, so that's the area that we're watching right now for the biggest of storms. You got that low pressure center right here, pretty good comma shaped low. So this is a pretty classic system that's kind of just driving these storms up north. So we're watching these storms as they move into the north central plains, and we do have a pretty good surge of moisture with the flow of things kind of moving up into the Midwest, coming from the Gulf. So we're getting that little late summer, early fall kind of severe weather season, if you will. And then our second storm out here is another low pressure center they've got kind of spinning around out here across coastal New England. All right, look at these storms that have been firing across sections of southern New England out here. We've got a lot of big time storms, even some large hail out there falling in Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. A lot of big time storms out there. So please do be careful if you are out there. There is actually a severe weather event happening. So we really need to make sure that we are talking about that. All right. So moving on here to the Storm Prediction Center for today, as you can see, we do have a pretty broad enhanced risk for severe weather going out for a Midwest event. You can see the stretches all the way from western sections of Wisconsin, including Minneapolis. That's in Minnesota, obviously, but got sections of south central Minnesota out there. You've got sections of southern South Dakota and eastern South Dakota, also in that enhanced risk. That's in the orange shade. That's level 3 to 5 risk for severe weather. All right, that is a pretty high risk, so that means that there is a significant severe weather event that is most likely going to happen. So that is a pretty big risk that we've got going out for these regions. So that does include Sioux Falls. That does include areas of to the west, or sorry, to the east of Minneapolis, but to the west of Minneapolis. But that does include Minneapolis as well. You can see just a lot of areas out here that are in the enhanced risk that are populated. You got Minneapolis, got St. Paul, Sioux Falls, Rochester, Bloomington, all those areas. You're in the enhanced risk. All right, so once again, that's level 3 to 5 risk. In the slight risk, that's in the yellow shade. All right, that's going out for the surrounding areas of the enhanced risk. Notice how we also do have a secondary slight risk over here for our New England event. All right, so that does include Boston, does include Springfield, so some sneaky areas that are actually in the slight risk out there. So Got Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Boston, Massachusetts, Madison, Wisconsin, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Providence, Rhode Island. And finally, you got your marginal risk. That's in the dark range shades, so level 1 out of 5 risk. All right, not really a high chance, more or less kind of a chance where you can see a scattered, isolated storm or two that could be severe. All right, but really need to worry about yourself if you're in the slight or the enhanced risk. All right, so today's risks. The enhanced risk is actually driven off of a 5% tornado threat. Now, notice that does not cover the entire enhanced risk area. The area that's included in the 5% is just sections of eastern South Dakota and southwestern Minnesota, right? So if you're in the 5% risk, I mean, you've got a decent shot at seeing a tornado. So it's what I would consider a slightly elevated tornado threat. So there is definitely a pretty good chance we're going to get a tornado today, even maybe a couple tornadoes today, just very possible for that. But that does include Sioux Falls, that includes Watertown, Wilmar, Minnesota, Brookings, South Dakota, and Mitchell, South Dakota. If you're in the green shade, you're in the 2% risk. Now, also, there could be certainly some tornadoes in the 2% risk. That's just going to be surrounding the 5% risk. That does fill in the rest of the enhanced risk, I believe, or at least most of it. But you go over to the wind threat. This is the main threat of today. It's a 30% hatched risk. Okay, so that's almost a 45% chance of seeing damage wind gusts within 25 miles of a point. That's 65 knots or greater for the entire hatched risk area. So if you're in the red shade, that's a 30% risk. That's what I would consider a very significant risk for seeing damage wind gusts. We're expecting a pretty major QLCS event to kind of occur out in this region. It's going to be sweeping right through this enhanced risk area. And that's basically what we've got. We got that 30% risk, including the entire enhanced risk area. Surrounding areas of that, you're in the 15% chance. That does go all the way over towards Wyoming. So it's interesting to see that. But you can see that the 15% chance that's in the yellow shade that kind of stretches all the way over towards the Great Lakes region. But it's got a very high population, so about 18 million people. Notice how we also do have a secondary 15% chance over here for a Southern New England event. I think that's going to be mainly driven off by damaged wind gusts, but even some isolated large hail is possible. We're getting some big time instability in this region as well, so that means you could definitely get some isolated supercells, or not really supercells, but storm cells, and they could get severe and strong enough to the point where you could definitely have some hail falling, could even be isolated large hail. But you've got a 5% chance in the brown shade surrounding all of these areas out here that are experiencing severe weather. All right, so you go over to your hail threat for today. Notice how, I mean, this is very interesting. You very rarely, with enhanced risks, usually, all right, they're not quite severe weather outbreaks, but they are very intense severe weather events. Very rarely will you also get a 30% hatch hail threat. Because usually you get a damage wind threat that's this high when you have a very well-defined like QLCS or even sometimes a derecho. Not this time. We're probably going to get isolated spots here of supercell development, and these could definitely drop some large hail. 30% hatch risk for hail, that's a really big risk, all right? So if you're in the hatched area, that is a 10% or greater probability of 2-inch diameter hail or larger within 25 miles of a point. All right, so that is a very high chance that you're going to see some very large hail in any of those regions. So if you're in the red shade, it's a 30% chance. If you're in the hatched area, that means that there is a significant chance of seeing damaging large hail. If you're in the 15% chance, that's the yellow shade, and then the 5% that surrounds all the 15% and 30% areas. Notice how we also do have that 15% risk up in a New England event. It's a little bit farther north, so we're thinking that it's probably going to be overland because you saw the slight risk does actually go over waters here. It does even go into eastern Long Island. The hail risk is a little bit farther north. So if the farther north you are, the higher chance you're going to get some large hail for the New England event. All right, so we go over to tomorrow's SPC outlook. You can see we have another slight risk. This does include areas of the Great Lakes. This includes pretty much northern sections of Ohio, Indiana, Illinois. You've got sections of Wisconsin, all of Michigan out there, on a little sliver of far western New York State in that slight risk. All right, so tomorrow's slight risk is driven off by a 2% tornado threat a little bit further north. So nothing too crazy, but definitely an isolated tornado or two are certainly possible tomorrow. You can see we also do have a 15% damage wind threat. So far, nothing too crazy, but that is a pretty broad slight risk, a pretty broad 15% chance of seeing damage wind gusts. So pretty populated area, considering that this is just on the Great Lake, on the Great Lakes. So definitely a concerning event tomorrow as well, even though it's probably not going to be as high of a threat as what we're experiencing today. But there is a 15% chance for damage wind gusts in the yellow shade. And then you also do have another 15% chance, pretty much for the same exact area as the hail threat. So as you can see, I have another 15% chance in the same area. So wind and hail threat, just the same. You got 15% in the yellow area, and then 5% in the reddish brown area, and then you obviously got that 2% tornado threat. Now, just to include this in the video, we're gonna mention this a little bit later in a different update. We do have another slight risk. The event kind of continues and extends into southern New England. It's a separate event from what you're experiencing if you're in southern New England now. All right, this is another slight risk that we've got extending from sections of northern Ohio into southern New England. You can see this does include the sections of the I-95 corridor, so a very populated area over there. This I'm concerned about. This could definitely get a little bit bigger. This could definitely expand, and we'll just have to continue to watch the setup for this. But I wouldn't be surprised if we saw an enhanced risk, because day 3 slight risk we've seen a lot of times been upgraded to a enhanced risk. So I'm not saying we're going to get that now. I'm just saying it's certainly possible with this event. But you've also got another slight risk, including areas of South Dakota and sections of southern North Dakota as well. So we're going to move over to our NAM 3 camera model for the Midwestern United States. So we're going to take a look here at just our storm setup. We're going to take a look at our kind of the what the future cast of the storm is looking like, if you want to put it that way. So take a look at what we've got as of about 4 or 5 p.m. Time of this video. You can see we do have a little line of storms that's starting to develop across sections of far eastern Wyoming. At this point, it's moving into Nebraska, into South Dakota, but this is expected to mature and strengthen as we go a little bit later into this evening and into tonight. So as you can see, we place a little bit farther forward, and we start to see a lot of thunderstorm development, not only with that line, but I think all across the region in general. We're going to get individual cells that could definitely be severe and could even have the chance to produce tornadoes. And notice how you see actually that exact scenario happening, where you do get a lot of these isolated cells across sections of Wisconsin, into Minnesota, even down here still into Nebraska. All of these cells could definitely have the potential to produce tornadoes. We know that because we have that 5% risk from the SPC. So whenever you see a little, bubbly looking shape to storm or cell or whatever, that means that storm could definitely have the potential to produce tornadoes. So I would really watch out if you're in the circled area, because you're going to be prior to the main line of storms. It's still going to be, trying to figure out how to get together. What we're worried about as far as tornadoes goes is, cells that could definitely fire across this region. All right, so we're talking about probably an overnight threat for tornadoes, because the NAM doesn't want this line to form yet, and it's it's already about 8 o'clock at this point. We still don't really have a well-defined line of storms, which so far we're already kind of seeing that play out. Just looking at radar, if you looked at radar now, but we'll see what the NAM shows. So we kind of continue this, and we do get a little bit more of a better, well-defined line, or kind of bunch of storms that's kind of moving their way through north central Nebraska. You got sections of south central South Dakota in there. All right, and notice how you see a lot of pink shades, a lot of purple shade. This is where we could definitely get some large hail. So it looks to me more or less like a cluster of storms rather than a line of storms. So definitely some strong winds embedded with this. I would expect severe winds with this, but also very large hail. It's like supercells kind of bunched together. That's the sense that I'm kind of getting from looking at this. I really do think that this could definitely be producing large hail and damaging wind gusts if this were to play out, but this is exactly in the middle of the night, so that would be a really bad scenario for areas of north central Nebraska and areas of southern South Dakota. And this is moving due east, pretty much, or I guess you could say northeast. So This is going to be sweeping through northern Iowa, southern Minnesota. This could definitely go all the way into Wisconsin with the environment we have. Now, this could definitely not play out. Something different from this could definitely play out, and that's kind of what we're seeing on radar now. So we'll really just have to see how the event plays out, but it's definitely capable of doing something like this, where you get a big bunch of supercells that produce some really nasty, large hail, very strong to damage and wind gusts. I mean, I would not be surprised if we had any destructive severe thunderstorms today. I mean, it's a very big day for severe storms. And keep in mind, you also do have this big time bunch of storms that we talked about earlier. This looks like a big tornado threat by 9 p.m. Look at what happens after we get through the overnight hours. Look at what happens as we get into the middle of the night. This bows out. This really strengthens and becomes a big, like a really massive bow echo that kind of stretches across sections of Wisconsin. I did not mean to click for sounding, but this is very concerning to me. This looks like another nasty damaged wind gust producer, and this is starting to move directly towards a very populated area here north of Chicago. This area along the Great Lakes. All right, this is a very populated area, so you really want to pay attention to this if this is definitely a possible scenario, and it sure is. All right, but what you would get with this is you would get a very strong southerly flow with big time surge of moisture, and then you probably get a very strong flow on the backside of this, and you probably get some really strong winds kind of pushing this to the east. Now that kind of looks like more of like a derecho setup. Now I'd be very surprised if we saw a derecho. I think it's definitely unlikely at this point. But this definitely looks like just a very strong damage wind gust and derecho like damage wind gust line there. But that bunch of storms moving through Nebraska and South Dakota just continues to move through, and we're getting all the way to 4 a.m. And this is still moving pretty well. Looks to me like it could even still be producing large hail if this were to play out. Our line has really broken up as this kind of moves to the Great Lakes here, and then gets into Michigan and really just falls apart. Still got some little storms out here, strong severe storms, but nothing nearly as crazy as what we saw back into Wisconsin. Now this bunch of storms is trying to stay alive as we go into the early morning hours of tomorrow. Now it really all it does is just fall apart, but you still got some isolated areas of shower and thunderstorm activity. Now that's the only thing that could keep this alive. And we get into tomorrow. Now the NAM, I will say, has really been struggling with this event, and what I'm about to show you is 100% not reliable information. All right, I totally don't mean to say this. Like, I mean, it's weird that I'm saying that this is unreliable information when I'm about to show it to you guys. I'm just saying, like, I mean, you can look back at my videos. I've always looked at the NAM. I've always used the NAM. All right, I'm still gonna show it just because I really like using it, and even if it's showing something that is pretty ridiculous, I think that there could still be some pretty useful information in there. But this part of the NAM, I think it's pretty ridiculous. So this is what we've got. All right, you've got this little bunch of storms moving through northern Indiana. Look what happens on the NAM. All right, we're getting to 5 p.m. tomorrow. So this is what happens tomorrow. We see a little bunch of showers, thunderstorm activity, kind of moving through sections of Wisconsin and Minnesota. Nothing too crazy. Kind of riding with that low pressure center, very weak low, 1,012 millibars. The storm really looks like it's going to fall apart. Look what happens out of nowhere in northern Indiana. All right, you get a big bunch of storms that start to kind of streak across this little region, almost looking like the beginning of a line. Look how much this just explodes, and boom, you already have such a sharp contrast, and you've all of a sudden got a line of storms that's moving just south. All right, very weird movement with this. You don't usually get storms that move south, but this is a pretty strong line of storms that has the characteristics of producing damaged wind gusts, and this continues to kind of strengthen, and it really does kind of bow out for a second, and it starts to move east to west. Now that is just that's not how things work, right? In weather, the jet stream moves west to east. Now you're probably wondering what the heck is going on here. Well, I can honestly not tell you. I don't understand this, but I will say that the NAM has actually showed this a few runs in a row. All right, it showed a similar situation, I would say, because it's not showing the same thing every run, but it has shown something similar. Like this one shows a much bigger line of storms just moving southward. This looks a lot likelier than what it was show what it's showing now. But you can look at the 18Z run from yesterday. It showed an even crazier event happening. It showed a derecho like event sweeping all the way from central Ohio all the way to sections of Illinois. I mean, look at that. That is just insane. That is directly east to west movement. So I'd be so surprised. I mean, you don't know how surprised I'd be if this would have happened. So I just want to say this is like 99% chance that this is not going to happen. So I just wanted to show you guys this because I think something like this could happen. Obviously not the east to west movement part, and obviously not like a super strong event, but definitely a potentially broad damaging wind gust line that could definitely have southward movement. I mean, it's not anything that we haven't seen before. We definitely have seen storms that have moved in the southerly direction. It's just that the jet stream, it just doesn't work like that. How you get storms that are going to move against the jet stream. I mean, you don't know how rare that is. So rare that it's almost impossible for that to happen. So, we're just going to leave that out. But you still have that little cluster of storms by 2 a.m. tomorrow into Wednesday. You still got a cluster of stratosphere storms kind of charging through sections of Illinois, Iowa, into sections of Missouri. This is very unreliable though because you saw that east to west movement, but it's really just gonna fizzle out if anything's gonna stay alive by the time these storms get to this point. But I mean, you can see definitely today a very intense round of severe weather. You're gonna have multiple little areas and little bunches of storms that are gonna be producing some damage wind gusts, large hail, and some tornadoes. I would say all hazards are really on the table for severe weather events today. So I'm pretty concerned about what's going to happen today. Obviously, we'll just have to wait and see what's going to happen for that, Illinois, Ohio, Indiana event. But definitely looks very concerning as far as our setup goes for that for our enhanced risk event up here into the Dakotas and the rest of the Midwest. So you look at the Cape real quick. So this is just going to show us kind of the thunderstorm juice we've got in the area. Look how much the Cape has just exploded in the recent hours. We take this out to this is 2 hours prior to the recording of this video. Look how high these Cape levels were. All right, between 4,000 to 5,000 joules per kilograms was seen all across this area. Anyone in the tan shade, the orange shade, this is 4,000 plus joules per kilograms of Cape. That is considered extremely high. So this is just very incredible high Cape values out here. You can even see a little signature there of that low pressure, even that comma shape. You can see it on Cape, which is just crazy. You got dry, cold air coming down from the backside from Canada, kind of meeting up with this low pressure. There is that warm surge pumping just super moist, super warm air up into the system. And then there you go. That's your low pressure signature. You're going to get storms that are going to fire across this region. So it's just crazy how much Cape is in this area. All right, it's just pretty intense, the setup in general. And this is just going to continue with these storms. And the storms are just not going to die down until the Cape dies down. So you see, even into 10 p.m. tonight, we still have isolated spots of up to 4,500 joules per kilograms of Cape. That is just so high, just really incredible Cape rates, or Cape values, I should say. So, very high Cape, very dangerous environment for these storms. If you get a tornado warning storm or a few storms that are definitely capable of producing tornadoes, you could certainly have a kind of long tracking supercell, if you want to put it that way. Not long tracking tornado necessarily, but long tracking supercell, meaning you could have a supercell that could last for a very long time with just the amount of Cape that you've got ahead of it in this environment, all right? But these storms are going to thrive until these Cape levels die down. Even into tomorrow, you can see how we could definitely have the potential for that line of storms to kind of evolve out in this region somewhere. It's because you're going to have very high Cape levels, once again, of widespread 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilograms, with some areas getting up to near 4,000, maybe even 4,500 joules per kilogram. So very intense environment that they've got there, and just big time Cape levels there. So that's definitely going to increase the potential for seeing strong to severe storms with some potentially destructive wind gusts possible out there into Nebraska, the Dakotas, and Iowa, just the rest of the Midwest in general tonight. So you take a look now. We're going to look at the southern New England event, because there is definitely the potential for some large hail and damage wind gusts over there. Right, as you can see, we have a few little bubblers, is like what I'd like to call it. You got a very weak surface low. It's 1,016 millibars, but it's this kind of storm itself has been just strong enough to be able to pop off low. It's got a little spin to it. You can even see it on satellite, so you could consider it a storm. It's very unorganized, but you've got a little spin to it. And it's kind of just doing its thing out here, but it's taking advantage of just the environment that it's entering, and it's taking advantage of that, and it's kind of producing a lot of convection. You get a lot of little bubbly storms, and you got a lot of cells that are starting to produce out there, or are starting to form out there into sections of southern New England. So as you can see, by the time recording this video, you had a lot of cells out there that were kind of charging through, making their way through this area across sections of Connecticut into Rhode Island, Massachusetts. Some of these have been strong to severe. We've even seen some very large hail. And some of these areas out here, there could definitely be some lingering storms out into Delmarva, New Jersey, sections of, Long Island, the rest of southern New England. It's certainly possible to get some isolated pop-up storms or two. That is certainly possible. I mean, look at all this activity. It's nothing crazy because it doesn't blow up your screen, but there is so much just isolated activity. I mean, it'd be crazy, just the amount of storms that we've got out here. So many tiny cells that just kind of form everywhere. It's like a kind of environment where it's just so hot and so moist that you get storms either way. They're just nothing too crazy, but the more organized storms, the more mature storms are definitely going to be farther south, kind of in a condensed area. So that's why we're going to call it a localized severe weather event. But anywhere in here is where the highest threat for seeing severe storms kind of will be. But once again, nothing too crazy. You move through this, and there's really just nothing that kind of blows your mind, catches your mind. But we get into the 28th, which should be Wednesday. This is Wednesday's event, the slight risk. All right, as you can see, you do end up getting a few storms, isolated pop-up storms on the NAM, but really nothing too crazy until you get to the afternoon, and it's a lot of the activity that just starts, that stays north. And the activity north is just not even too crazy. I mean, you got some isolated storms up here, showers and thunderstorms, but it's, once again, nothing too crazy. So the NAM's kind of struggling with today's event, even into Wednesday's event. So the NAM in general is just having a hard time picking up on these storms, but we'll continue to watch this for sure. But definitely a potentially dangerous isolated event today across sections of southern New England. And you look at the Cape levels for today and tomorrow, you can see just why we have why we have these storms. The setup we've got, well, you've got isolated spots of 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilograms. That can definitely get some strong severe storms. So that's what we've got going on right now. And getting into Wednesday, you can see those Cape levels returning. You can see they're a little bit more widespread. So that's why we can have more of an intense severe weather event by Wednesday, with Cape levels getting more widespread into the 3,000 joules per kilogram range. So, for the last part of the update, we're just going to take a look quickly at Hurricane, Hurricane Gilma. All right, so I apologize, I forgot the name already. But what's going on with Gilma is right now it's kind of doing its thing out in the Pacific, not really bothering anybody other than the fish. But Gilma's been very strong. All right, Gilma has been a major hurricane, I believe, and Gilma's she's still got an eye to her. You can see, actually, I believe it did go through an eye replacement cycle. Otherwise, the storm is just battling a lot of shear. I mean, a lot of wind shear. You can see how the storm kind of got flattened, especially on the western side. It's battling a lot of shear. Here's a great example of part of the storm getting sheared off. You see how we had some very clear outer bands and these clouds up here? You see how they just get disappeared, almost like cut apart? All right, that is wind shear. That these strong upper level winds that's just messing with the storm, and it just kind of messes up the storm and cuts pieces of the storm off, and it's what kills hurricanes. So we're thankful that we have a good amount of wind shear out here, because you look at the cone, and the cone looks pretty concerning, other than the fact that once this storm gets to Hawaii, which we are expecting this storm to get at least to the vicinity of Hawaii, we're expecting it to be only a tropical depression. So this storm is going to continue to experience strong wind shear. Gilma is going to continue to move in its westerly track, and it's going to end up somewhere north or just near Hawaii. But we're expecting by 8 a.m. Friday a technical landfall, or I mean, this might not even make landfall, but it will bring its impacts to the northern sections of Hawaii as a tropical depression. Nothing too crazy. We're just continuing this to move its way through this area of the Pacific throughout the week, and then by Friday we're expecting this to be weakened down all the way to a tropical depression. So just want to kind of give you guys a quick overview on that, just in case you're somehow watching this from Hawaii. But that's gonna wrap up the video, guys. So thank you all for coming to watch. I'll see you guys in the next video. Please be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Apologize for not really getting through that very well. I mean, whenever I'm gone for like a long time, take a break from posting, this always happens to me. It's nothing crazy. I always end up, messing up my videos or, forgetting something or whatever. So apologize about that. I'll get back in this the swing of things once I do a little bit more video work. But once again, that's all I got for you guys, and thank you all for coming to watch. I'll see you guys next video.